Thank you for the very kind words, Brian, Catherine and Jocelyn, for organizing all this. This is just a fantastic room. I think we're all very aligned. Yes, we're from Calgary. I actually grew up in Streetsville, Ontario, and our mayor was Hazel McCallion, and she used to come to my parents' Christmas party. I remember I was a helping bartender at 16 years old. Things were different then. And having to lug Sam out of our basement, her long deceased husband, and prop him in the passenger seat so she could drive 2 miles down the road to where she lived. But Mississauga took over Streetsville, and then Hazel took over Mississauga, and I think many of you know her here. And congrats to everyone in here, all you small, medium, and large manufacturing, all different sectors. You know, we're oil and gas, but we all depend on each other. And Sue and I don't need to win anything. We're just doing what we think we should, and there's so many people in here working and advocating for all our common causes who are equally or more deserving of this. But we're honored and thankful, and I'm sure Sue will give a far more articulate and sensitive thank you than that. So just a comment on this Game Changer award and designation. Sue and I are very lucky to have 3 wonderful sons. They all turned out to be pretty good baseball players, so other than doing oil and gas, this is sort of what dominates our life. But if your kids are playing competitive level high school ball or college ball, you can actually follow all their games on an app called Game Changer. And it's on my phone. I can actually watch. One of my kids is playing right now, and I can watch it. So it's kind of ironic that we win the Game Changer Award. Our last kid is in his final year of college, so I was thinking maybe we could start getting advocacy messages into the Game Changer app, and maybe that's something you can work with, Tor. I don't know. But I'll talk a little on the macro, the resource wealth that this country is blessed with, and what we should be doing with it. Sue will focus more on how advocacy will help all of us get it done. So we actually talked before this, so a couple times a year, it doesn't hurt. But obviously Canada's blessed with an abundance of resource wealth, you know, be it minerals, forests, oil and gas, water, and I think we're world leaders at developing all of it. I'll stick to oil and gas tonight in the interest of time, but just to twist a really dumb quote from someone a decade ago, it's probably a fellow who inspired a lot of the advocacy we do, but I twisted it to, Canadians are continually using what's between their ears to do an ever better job of developing what's beneath their feet. I think you probably remember what the original quote was. But onto the slide, and sticking with the baseball theme, curveballs are hard to hit, and we in the oil and gas industry have had nothing but curveballs thrown at us for a decade, as I think you well know. And you can only spend so long fouling a curveball off till you get your fastball, but we're still waiting for that. So this is the list of all the major league curveballs that have been thrown at us, and both Pierre and Catherine referenced some of these. And lots of positive talk lately, but none of those have actually gone away yet. So you recognize C69 and the emissions cap and net zero. I find the emissions cap probably the most egregious because despite emissions coming from all sectors and from industry and consumers alike, it would only apply to oil and gas, so that was a bit mystifying. So at the end, the previous regime wasn't even trying to hide the fact that their real goal of most of their environmental legislation was to eliminate Canadian oil and gas and not improve the environment. But we survived, and as the world becomes far more insular and competitive, the importance of this sector for improving the economic situation across the country, I think, has become increasingly apparent. And a good portion of the developed world is very quickly figuring out that most of the initiatives on this page are unnecessary and wildly uneconomic. So hopefully they all go away. I think you can read them. I missed decarbonization, which is, and we have peers in the oil and gas industry that use that term regularly, which it makes absolutely no sense at all. Because after you're finished with oil and gas, I think we're made of carbon, so maybe we're next. But anyway, that's a bit too conspiracy theory-like. But the new regime is saying all the right things about growing our oil and gas production and diversifying our infrastructure. If they follow through, and that remains to be seen, then the country will be in better shape. And the sad thing, it's pretty much everything Pierre was planning to do, but we'll get you, get you back. It kind of feels like we've been locked in an undersized dog kennel for over a decade by regulation like C69, so we kind of say it's time to drop the leash. And Leash is one of my favorite and Sue's least favorite Pearl Jam songs. But if you've ever listened to it, it's an awesome song. But there's some interesting facts on there. Of the top 8 oil and gas producers in the world, only 2 are democracies, us and the United States. Of the top 8 producing nations in the world, only 1 has carbon taxes, and that's us. And so we're handicapping ourselves. It's like running a marathon with weights. And I've actually figured out over the years how to keep my weight belt permanent, but so I don't run marathons. Looking at Canadian natural gas, which is kind of what our company does, and LNG specifically, I think the 2 charts in the middle really quantify just the opportunity we have. The emission reduction that comes from replacing coal for electrical generation, it's, you guys don't need numbers during dinner, but it's a lot. It's 15.4 megatons per BCF. So if we grew a 10 BCF a day Canadian LNG industry, which is where we were headed back in 2008, that first 10 BCF a day ended up on your coast, but we're fortunate to get another crack of it. But that 10 BCF a day industry would offset 50% of all the emissions from the Canadian oil and gas sector, including oil sands. So it's just a massive, obvious opportunity. During the past, 5 or 6 years, Paris Article 6 has been used as sort of a blocking mechanism for Canadian LNG as to who gets credit for the reductions. And our opinion's always been there's only one global atmosphere. There's no plexiglass around countries. So if a BCF a day of Canadian natural gas via LNG lands in China or India or Thailand, that's a win for the globe, full stop. So let's just claim it and let's get going. There's noise from the south, and a lot of it is noise. Well, let's make Canada the 51st state and so on. But independent of all that, we're beholden to some skinny bureaucrats sitting in cafes in Paris or Brussels or Ottawa playing games with emission accounting. It's ridiculous. So let's drop that leash. I think recent polling indicates that up to 75% of Canadians support building more oil and gas pipelines, even a majority in Quebec. So we should take advantage of that while the opportunity's there. But what could we do? It's all on that slide. We have a fabulous array of opportunities, both for gas and oil, and most of them aren't new. You'll recognize the names, and I won't go through them all. But if we actually executed on a good portion of this, we really would be a global energy superpower, and we'd have the best performing economy in the G7 or G20 for a very, very long time. I think we should ultimately build them all. Just be careful not to do too many at the same time and create inflation. On the gas side, it's going to be a watershed for Canada coming up here. There's a 60-foot flare at Kitimat Right now, the first boat arrives June 29th. The loaded boat supposedly is leaving July 8th, and Canada will actually truly be in the LNG game. It's completely undersold. This is a milestone. It's the most expensive infrastructure project in the history of the country, and it sort of seems like we're opening up a new Canadian Tire. But this is big. But if you do LNG Canada Phase 2, Rockies or Sea Limbs, which we're in, and Cedar, then you got 6 BCF a day on the coast. That matters. That's a meaningful business. It accomplishes the diversification of markets that I think is a good idea for the country, and we'll see where we go from there. But in the long term, despite what we hear, the U.S. needs lots of Canadian gas, and they're going to need a lot more of it by the end of this decade. We spend a lot of time on that. As 2 of their 3, they're on that slide, but the slide's too small on this screen. 2 of their 3 big gas supply basins, other than the Permian and your Texas, are going to hit their tipping point, and the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin that we live in is going to be counted on for more and more gas to source the Gulf Coast liquefaction. So Canada's got a massive opportunity on the West Coast, diversify your markets, and more and more gas to the U.S. I talk to our premier occasionally. I like the idea of a gas pipeline going straight south from Alberta to the Gulf Coast, run it along the old Keystone XL route, but sell gas, and then build the last spur from Oklahoma to the Gulf. There's a lot of bad kind of karma about Keystone XL, so maybe you call it something like Alberta Express, but I think that's one that has a good shot at getting built. It's not one that's in the public domain yet. I think several people mentioned Energy East. That's the most controversial oil pipeline, but in my mind, that's the one that absolutely should get built. Because it would actually make Canada oil self-sufficient, because we still bring 1 million barrels a day into the country from less desirable regimes, and we would eliminate that and use Canadian oil. It would also eliminate the risk from Gretchen, the Wicked Witch of Michigan, which is a big risk that we should pay attention to, because she's trying to block Line 5 all the time. If you build all the pipelines on that map, well, you better keep them full, and you better keep them full for a long time. So a logical question is, can we do that? And the answer, you knew it, but we most certainly can. That shows all the petroleum basins in Canada. All we ever think about is the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin, and it will source every pipeline on that map for as long as we can see. We're blessed. It's the gift that keeps on giving. The Montney, which you people hear about regularly, we produced 31 out of 645 TCF. So it's still in the top of the first inning. But I put this slide in because I knew I was coming east to show we have all kinds of other basins and opportunities in this country. They're largely ignored. And most of these opportunities are off limits because of federal, and at times, it's not just the federal government, provincial restrictions. So Brian mentioned that he and I started at Shell. Well, I spent 14 years there, and of my career, the first part, Sue spent 5 years of hers there. She's quite a bit smarter than me, so she got out of there quicker. But I did get to see an awful lot of this, because I would dig around in files, and I just found all this stuff super interesting. So offshore West Coast, it's beautiful. There's all kinds of things partially delineated, oil and natural gas, completely off limits. It's not a lot different than offshore California, but at least it got started there so they can sustain what they have now. Off limits, you can't drill. There's things to follow up, but we're gonna run tankers by daily, lots and lots of tankers. So why don't we go find out what we have there? The Arctic and the East Coast, they're sort of open, sort of not. The Utica play in the Marcellus area, but it's a separate zone. It doesn't stop at the border, so there's wonderful gas reserves in Quebec on the south side of the St. Lawrence River. I've looked at a lot of stuff in there. It's actually pipeline spec gas. You don't even have to process it. So it is the most logical supply source for East Coast LNG. You could bring it all the way across the country, but pipeline tolls get pretty expensive if you have to build new ones. And turns out Quebec, I think you guys, they keep that quite quiet, but they're gonna need a lot more natural gas very, very soon because their whole energy stack is starting to get a little fragile. So I kind of hope I last long enough to stand up a rig on the south side of the St. Lawrence and watch Mr. Guilbeault and Trudeau and Legault wet their pants. So. But really the most important point about all this, time is the great healer. The world's increasing energy demands, might not be in my lifetime, but all of this is going to get developed, and that's wonderful for Canada. And it's just more and more resource that you probably didn't even know we had, and it's probably good for geologists too. So I think we all love the idea. It sounds good. We could get hockey sweaters of Canada as an energy superpower, but to me, what makes sense is a continental North American energy superpower, working together with the United States, being the prime supplier of oil and gas to the world. We can That's a good one. We can permanently diminish OPEC and Russia and actually displace them in key markets. And I made this slide before all the current crisis in the Middle East. But we have a myriad of opportunities and we have some current advantages, but they won't last forever. Resource plays, they're not confined to North America. We just have a huge piece of the oil field service suite here. We got the infrastructure all built so we can economically develop them. But there are enormous shale and fine-grained sandstone resource gas plays all around the world. We need to get in front of this, and once you get the gas on boats via LNG to those countries, you got their markets. And I think we could be shipping LNG off all four coasts of North America in fairly short order and take advantage of that. The US is generally long production, short resource, ultimately. Canada's the opposite. We're long resource, short production, and we're short production mostly because of government regulation and inability to access, but we have a chance to fix that. I think this works, and then the flywheel that helps the whole country, it's resource plays, the natural gas plays that the world depends on now decline every year, and they decline by about 30% a year. So if we had that 10 BCF a day complex on the west coast of Canada, we'd have to spend $20 billion a year in Alberta and BC and Saskatchewan just to keep production flat. And how that helps Ontario and the rest of the country is all the tubulars, all the equipment, all the chemicals, an awful lot of what we use gets made here. So it's just a huge flywheel of royalties and jobs. So, and again, having the only two democracies being the main supplier of oil and gas to the world seems pretty logical. And oil and gas are still 80% of the total energy stack. Demand is growing, not diminishing. I know lots of you in this room probably follow the group that Arjun Murthy runs, and he points out that there is no energy transition. I think, Catherine, you mentioned that. The world set the all-time record for consumption of every energy source there is on the planet in 2022. I haven't seen the 23 stats. I'm sure they're the same. So maybe the configuration of the slices in the energy pie, maybe they're changing. Fossil fuels are still 80% of the slices, but the pie is getting faster than anything. So there actually is no energy transition. We've only ever transitioned off whale oil. That's it. So Sue's going to talk about advocacy, so I'll end with what we together and with all our industry advocacy and our company. You probably noticed we're not afraid to put our logo on any of these slides because this is what we say in private, this is what we say to investors, and we aren't afraid to say any of this publicly. But the first three are kind of no-brainers. Energy is the backbone of our current civilization. That's a true story. The whole, having to pick which energy source, that ended a long time ago. It's an and discussion, not or. We need more of everything. So as an oil and gas producer, it's an easy discussion to have now. Well, we should be doing renewables. The answer is we should be doing renewables, more oil and gas. We should be doing it all. We can try hydrogen. It's a little expensive, but someday there's a place for everything. Lots of us in this room are involved in advocacy, and it's really aimed at making Canada better, ensuring a strong future for our children. We're all going to be fine, but it's our children and their children that we worry about. Fighting government overreach and ensuring freedom. Sue and I are passionate about this. We've helped lead over the last while an industry effort to coordinate multiple advocacy initiatives, more funding, more interbreeding, if you like, and it's all designed to just educate the public about the multiple positive aspects of Canadian oil and gas. I think we're all disappointed that our guy, our party, lost the election, and there's a tendency to withdraw when that happens. Like, I'm sure the Oilers are all hanging out in their basement and they're not coming out for a week, but that is the tendency when you drill a dry hole as a geologist. Same thing, you just don't want to see anybody, but that's absolutely the wrong thing to do at this point, because the enemies of freedom and our specific industry that we have to deal with, they're always hard at work, and we need to be equally relentless. So I think we're slowly changing the game. There is logic starting to creep in, and Sue and I will continue to try and be game changers in whatever way we can. So once again, thank you.